Hello, I'm Dr. James Bogash, Master of Health and Longevity and creator of Modern Health Myths. And today we're going to talk about a topic that I have been pushing and explaining ever since before I published my Migraines and Epilepsy book, probably 6 or 7 years ago. And that is that anytime we have a brain thing going on, whether it's migraines, seizures, dementia, cognitive loss, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, there is an underlying process that has to be addressed. And it almost never is. All too often, what we do is we try to control the seizure, or we try to control aggression, and we pat each other on the back, and we high-five each other, and we say we did it. We didn't do anything. When we use those medications to control a seizure or to control a migraine or to hopefully, there are no drugs for Alzheimer's, but if there were, we'd just be using it to control the symptoms while the underlying problem continues to rage unchecked. And it's one of the reasons I get a lot of questions on my Migraines and Epilepsy book and why those two are connected, and it is because they have a lot of the same underlying characteristics. And I've always said that I just tweak a couple things here and there and I could make my book a cognitive decline Alzheimer's book, because that is the downstream, the later consequences of having things like epilepsy or migraines that go on, the damage. And so just to drive this home, there were actually 2 studies just recently published showing just how freaking connected dementia and seizures are. In the first study, they looked at both people with dementia and people with epilepsy and how much they had a risk for developing the other. So in the group that had dementia, this group was 82% more likely to develop epilepsy after the dementia diagnosis, which then we're going to use drugs that suppress the brain, and that gets ugly in that particular population. And then they looked at people who had developed epilepsy. Now these were an older group of population of people looking at around, they followed up after 65 years of age. So these weren't 20-somethings, these are generally a Medicare-type population. And they found that those with epilepsy had a 99% increased risk of being diagnosed with dementia. Like, that's high. So those are strongly linked. And just to show things being even worse, there was another study published right around the same time in the same journal, and they looked at late onset epilepsy, which they considered as epilepsy after 67 years of age. And they looked at what the likelihood of developing dementia was. And in those people who developed epilepsy late in their life, they had a 305% greater risk of being diagnosed with dementia. And if that happened to them, the timeline between epilepsy and diagnosis of dementia was about 3.6, so a little under 4 years. The take-home message is that there is a problem in the brain. It is not a deficiency of anti-epileptic drugs. It's not a deficiency of acetylcholine drugs. It's a fundamental problem with the way that your brain cells generate energy. Happens to be the mitochondria, my favorite organelle, but the focus needs to be on improving brain health, not just in the 65-year-old population, but all throughout our life, and that is not discussed. So if you've got a family history, let's say your mom or father developed epilepsy at 65 or 70, developed dementia at 65 or 70, we could MRI you now and find changes in your brain that are already occurring. These changes need to start early, and that is billions of dollars trying to find a treatment for Alzheimer's, and we don't have one. 1/3 of seizures of people with epilepsy are not controlled with medication. That's because we're not trying to fix the underlying problem. And it continually frustrates me. I've got a ton of resources on my Migraines and Epilepsy, both website and Facebook page, on things we can do to improve brain health. But as always, I will post a link to these studies in the comment section. Make sure you like this video, share it with somebody who you know has a brain and wants to protect it, and subscribe to the channel.